experienced the horrors of it all. They remembered the good bits. So when I finish talking this afternoon, if you feel urged to show your appreciation, then please throw only paper money. The coins may inflict injury. So this is one, I'll be very surprised if you haven't heard it, or aren't familiar with it at least. It's Clancy of the Overflow. I'd written him a letter, which I had, for want of better knowledge, sent to where I met him, down the Lachlan, years ago. He was shearing when I knew him, so I sent the letter to him, just on spec, addressed as follows: Clancy of the Overflow. And an answer came, directed in a writing unexpected, and I think the same was written with a thumbnail dipped in tar. It was his shearing mate who wrote it, and verbatim I will quote it. Clancy's gone to Queensland droving, and we don't know where he are. In my wild erratic fancy, visions come to me of Clancy, gone a droving down the Cooper, where the western drovers go. As the stock are slowly stringing, Clancy rides behind them, singing. For a drover's life has pleasures that the townsfolk never know. And the bush has friends that meet him, and their kindly voices greet him in the murmur of the breezes and the river on its bars. And he sees the vision splendid of the sunlit plains extended, and at night the wondrous glory of the everlasting stars. I am sitting in my dingy little office, where a stingy ray of sunlight struggles feebly down between the houses tall, and the fetid air and gritty of the dusty, dirty city through the open window floating spreads its foulness over all. And in place of lowing cattle, I can hear the fiendish rattle of the tramways and the buses making hurry down the street, and the language uninviting of the gutter children fighting comes fitfully and faintly through the ceaseless tramp of feet. And the hurrying people daunt me, and their pallid faces haunt me as they shoulder one another in their rush and nervous haste, with their eager eyes and greedy, and their stunted forms and weedy. For townsfolk have no time to grow, they have no time to waste. And I somehow rather fancy that I'd like to change with Clancy. Like to take a turn at droving where the seasons come and go, while he faced the round eternal of the cash book and the journal. But I doubt he'd suit the office. Clancy of the Overflow. And another one, I better just keep myself in order here. The other poem that's very well known and loved by Patterson is called The Bushman. And I'm sure many of you would have heard it at school. On the outer Barcoo, where the churches are few and the men of religion are scanty, on a track never crossed except by folk that are lost, one Michael McGee had a shanty. Now this Mike was the dad of a 10-year-old lad, plump, healthy and stoutly conditioned. He was strong as the best, but poor Mike had no rest, for the youngster had never been christened, and his wife used to cry if the darling should die, so Peter would not recognise him. But by luck he survived till a preacher arrived, who agreed straight away to baptise him. Now the artful young rogue, as they held their cloak, with his ear to the keyhole, was listening. And he muttered in fright, and his features turned white. What the devil and all is this christening? He was none of your dolts. He'd seen them brand colts. And it seemed, to his small understanding, if the man in the frock makes him one of the flock, it must be something very like Brandon. So away with a rush he set off to the bush, and the tears in his eyelids, they glistened. "'Tis outrageous," said he, "to brand youngsters like me. I'll be dashed if I'll stop and be christened." Like a young native dog, he ran into a log, and his father, with language uncivil, never heeding the priest, cried aloud in his haste, "Come out and be christened, you devil!" But he lay there, as snug as a bug in a rug, and his parents in vain might reprove him, till his reverend spoke. He was fond of a joke. "I have a notion," he said, "that'll move him. Poke a stick up the log, give the sapling a sprog, poke him easy and don't hurt or maim him. It's not long you'll stand. I've the water at hand. When he rushes out this end, I'll name him." "Oh, here he comes! Oh, for shame! I've forgotten the name. Oh, was it Patsy or Michael or Dennis?" As the youngster ran out, the priest gave a shout. "Take your chance anyhow, with McGuinness!" As the howling young cub ran away to the scrub, where he knew that pursuit would be risky, the priest, as he fled, flung a flask at his head, which was labelled McGuinness's whiskey. Now McGuinness McGee has been made a JP, and the one thing he hates more than sin is to be asked by the folk who have heard of the joke how he came to be christened McGuinness. And Patterson, still in his playful mood, talks about the Bushmen who came into Sydney for a holiday. It was the man from Ironbark who struck the Sydney town. He wandered over street and park, he wandered up and down, he loitered here, he loitered there, till he was like to drop, until at last, in sheer despair, he sought a barber's shop. "Here, shave me beard and whiskers off. I'll be a man of mark. I'll go and do the Sydney toff up home in Ironbark." The barber chap was short and flash, as barbers mostly are. He wore a straight-to-set fancy sash and smoked a huge cigar. He was a humorist of note and keen at repartee. He laid the odds and kept a tote, whatever that might be. There were some gilded youths that sat along the barber's wall. Their eyes were dull, their heads were flat. They had no brains at all. To them the barber passed a wink, his dexter eyelid shut. "I'll make this bloomin' yokel think his bloomin' throat is cut." And as he soaked and rubbed it in, he made a rude remark. "I suppose the flats is pretty green up there in Ironbark." A grunt was all reply he got. He shaved the bushman's chin, then made the water boiling hot and dipped the razor in. He raised his hand. His brow grew black. He paused a while to gloat, then slashed the red-hot razor back across his victim's throat. Upon the newly shaven skin it made a livid mark. No doubt it fairly took him in, the man from Ironbark. He fetched a wild up-country yell, might wake the dead to hear. And though his throat he knew full well was cut from ear to ear, he struggled gamely to his feet to face his murderous foe. "You've done for me, you dog. I'm beat. One hit before I go. I only wish I had a knife, you blessed murdering shark. But you'll remember all your life the man from Ironbark. He lifted up a hairy paw with one tremendous clout. It landed on the barber's jaw and knocked the barber out. He set to work with tooth and nail and made the place a wreck. He grabbed the nearest gilded youth and tried to break his neck. And all the while his throat he held to save his vital spark. Murder! Bloody murder! Yelled the man from Ironbark. A peeler man who heard the din came in to see the show. He tried to run the Bushman in, but he refused to go. And when at last the barber spoke, he said, "Was all in fun? Was only just an harmless joke, a trifle over tongue?" "A joke," he said. "By George, that's fine, a lively sort of lark. I'd like to catch this murdering swine some night in Ironbark." And while around the shearing floor, the listening shearers gape, he tells the story, awe and awe, and brags of his escape. "Them barber chaps what keeps a tote. By George, I've had enough. One tried to cut me blooming throat, but thank the Lord it's tough." And whether he's believed or not, there's one thing to remark, that flowing beards are all the go, way up in Ironbark. And still in the silly mood, he came up with this one. It was somewhere up the country, in the land of rock and scrub, that they formed an institution called the Bushmen Polo Club. They were long and wiry natives from the rugged mountainside, and the horse was never saddled that the G-bungs couldn't ride, but their style of playing polo was irregular and rash. They had mighty little science, but a mighty lot of dash. And they trained on mountain ponies. They were muscular and strong, though their coats were quite unpolished, and their manes and tails were long. And they used to train those ponies wheeling cattle in the scrub. They were demons, were the members of the Bushmen Polo Club. It was somewhere down the country, in the city's smoke and steam, that a polo club existed called the Cuff and Collar Team. As a social institution, it was a marvellous success, for the members were distinguished by exclusiveness of dress. They had natty little ponies that were nice and smooth and sleek. Of course, their cultivated owners only rode them once a week. And they started up the country in pursuit of sport and fame, for they meant to show the G-bungs how they ought to play the game. And they took their valets with them, just to give their boots a rub. There they started operations on the Bushmen Polo Club. Now my listeners can imagine how the contest ebbed and flowed. When the G-bung boys got going, it was time to clear the road. And the game was so terrific that ere half the time was gone, a spectator's leg was broken just from merely looking on. For they worried one another till the plain was strewn with dead. And the score was kept so even that they neither got ahead. And the cuff and collar captain, as he tumbled off to die, was the last surviving player. So the game was called a tie. Then the captain of the G-bung raised him slowly from the ground. Though his wounds were mostly mortal, yet he fiercely gazed around. There was no one to oppose him. All the rest were in a trance. So he scrambled on his pony for his last expiring chance. For he meant to make an effort to get victory for his side. And he struck a goal and missed it and tumbled off and died by the old Campaspe River, where the breezes shake the grass. There's a row of little tombstones that the stockmen never pass, for they bear a rude inscription saying, "Stranger, drop a tear, for the cuff and collar players, the G-bung boys lie here. and on misty moonlit evenings, as the dingoes howl around, you can see the shadows flitting down that phantom polo ground. You can hear the loud collisions as the flying players meet, and the rattle of the mallets and the rush of ponies' feet, till the terrified spectator rides like blazes to the pub. He's been haunted by the spectre of the G-Bung Polo Club. Okay, here's another one. I won't go on too long, by the way, but here's another one that's a favourite of Banjo Patterson. In fact, more of an adventure type story, and one of the few poets of Australia whose work has been featured in film and TV for years. It's a famous poem, rather long one, called, guess what?
The Man from Snowy River.
The Man from Snowy River. Right? Okay, fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. There was movement at the station, for the word had passed around that the poult from Old Regret had got away and had joined the wild bush horses. It was worth £1,000. So all the cracks had gathered to the fray. All the tried and noted riders from the stations near and far had gathered at the homestead overnight, for the Bushmen love hard riding where the wild bush horses are, and the stock horse snuffs the battle with delight. There was Harrison who made his pile when Pardon won the cup. The old man with his hair as white as snow, but few could ride beside him when his blood was fairly up. He would go wherever man and horse could go. And Clancy of the Overflow came down to lend a hand. A better horseman never held the reins, for never horse could throw him while the saddle girth would stand. He learnt to ride while droving on the plains, and one was there, a stripling, on a small and weedy beast. It was something like a racehorse, undersized, with a touch of team or pony, 3 parts thoroughbred at least, and such as are by mountain horsemen prized. He was small and tough and wiry, just the sort that won't say die. There was courage in his quick and patient tread, and he bore the badge of gameness in his bright and fiery eye, and the proud and lofty carriage of his head. But still so small and weedy, one would doubt his power to stay, and the old man said, "That horse will never do for a long and tiring gallop, lad. You better stop away. Those hills are far too rough for such as you." So he waited, sad and wistful. Only Clancy stood his friend. "I think we ought to let him come," he said, "for I warrant he'll be with us when he's wanted at the end. For both his horse and he are mountain bred. He hails from Snowy River, up by Kosciuszko's side, where the hills are twice as steep and twice as rough, and a horse's hooves strike firelight from the flintstones every stride, and a man who holds his own is good enough. For the Snowy River riders in the mountains make their home, where the river runs those giant hills between. I've seen full many a horseman since I first commenced to roam, but nowhere yet such horsemen have I seen." So we went. They found the horses by a big mimosa clump, and they raced away toward the mountain's brow. And the old man gave the order, "Boys, go at 'em at the jump. No use to try for fancy riding now. And Clancy, you must wheel them. Try to wheel them to the right. Ride boldly, lad, and never fear the spills. For never yet was rider who could keep the mob in sight, if once they gain the shelter of those hills." So Clancy rode to wheel them. He was riding on the wing, where the best and boldest riders take their place. And he raced his stock horse past them, and he made the rangers ring with his stock whip as he met them face to face. And they halted for a moment as he swung the dreaded lash, but they saw their well-loved mountains full in view. And they charged beneath the stock whip with a sharp and sudden dash, and off into the mountain's crop they flew. And fast the horsemen followed, where the gorges deep and black resounded to the thunder of their tread, and their stockwebs spoke the echoes, and they fiercely answered back from the cliffs and crags that beetled overhead. And upward, ever upward, the wild horses held their way, where mountain action and courage on grew wide. And the old man muttered fiercely, "We may bid the mob good day. No man can hold them down the other side." When they reached the mountain summit, even Clancy took a pull. It well might make the boldest hold their breath, for the wild hop scrub grew thickly and the hidden ground was full of wombat holes, and any slip was death. But the man from Snowy River let the pony have his head. He swung his stockwhip round and gave a cheer, and he raced him down the mountain like a torrent down its bed, while the others stood and watched in very fear. He sent the flintstones flying, but the pony kept his feet. He cleared the fallen timber in his stride, and the man from Snowy River never shifted in his seat. It was glad to see that mountain horseman ride. Then they lost him for a moment, where two mountain gullies met. But a final glimpse reveals, on a dim and distant hillside, the wild horses racing yet, with the man from Snowy River at their heels. And he ran them single-handed, till their sides were white with foam. He followed like a bloodhound on their track, till they halted, cowed and beaten. And he turned their heads for home, and alone and unassisted, brought them back. Oh, that is hardy mountain pony. He could scarcely raise a trot. He was blood from hip to shoulder from the spur, but his pluck was still undaunted, and his courage fiery hot, for never yet was mountain horse a cur. And down by Kosciuszko, where the pine-clad ridges raise their torn and rugged battlements on high, where the air is clear as crystal, and the white stars but fairly blaze at midnight in the cold and frosty sky, and where along the overflow the reed beds sweep and stray, and the mountain plains are wide, the man from Snowy River is a household word today, and the stockmen tell the story of his ride. Thank you. One last one. This time it's not Patterson. This time it's a guy called John O'Brien, who was a priest and a poet, and he wrote this little verse, quite applicable this afternoon, about the Australians from the outback who are incurable pessimists. We'll all be ruined, said Hanrahan, in accents most forlorn. Outside the church ere mass began, one frosty Sunday morn. The congregation stood about, coat collars to the ears, and talked of crops and stock and drought, as it had done for years. "It's looking crook," said Daniel Crook. "Begad, it's crook, me lad. For never since the banks went broke have seasons been so bad." "It's dry, all right," said young O'Neill, with which astute remark he squatted down upon his heel and chewed a piece of bark. And all around the chorus ran, "It's looking dry, no doubt." "We'll all be ruined," said Hanrahan, "before the year is out. The crops are done. You'll have your work to save one bag of grain. From here way up to back of Burke, they're singing out for rain. They're singing out for rain," he said, "and all the tanks are dry." The congregation scratched his head and gazed about the sky. "There won't be grass in any case enough to feed an ass. There's not a blade on Casey's place as I came down to mass. And all, if rain don't come this month," said Dan, and cleared his throat to speak. "We'll all be ruined," said Hanrahan, "if rain don't come this week." A heavy silence seemed to steal on all at this remark, and each man squatted on his heel and chewed a piece of bark. "We need an inch of rain, we do," O'Neill observed at last, while Kirk maintained we needed 2 to put the danger past. "If we don't get 3 inches, man, or 4 to break this drought, we'll all be ruined," said Andrew Ham, "before the year is out." In God's good time, down came the rain. And all the afternoon, on iron roof and window pane, it drummed a homely tune. And through the night it pattered still as lightsome, gladsome elves on dripping spout and windowsill kept talking to themselves. It pelted all day long, a singing at its work, till every heart took up the song way out to Backerburg. And every creek a banker ran, and dams spilled over top. "We'll all be ruined," said Andrew Ham, "if this rain doesn't stop." And stop it did. And stop it did in God's good time, as spring came in to fold and mantle all the hills sublime in green and pink and gold. And days flew by on dancing feet with harvest hopes immense, and laughing eyes beheld the wheat mid nodding o'er the fence. And oh, the smiles on every face, as happy lad and lass, through grass knee deep on Casey's place, went riding down to Mass. And round the church enclothed in teal discoursed the men of mark, and each man squatted on his heel and chewed a piece of bark. "There'll be bushfires for sure, Mariah. There will, without a doubt. We'll all be ruined," said Andrew Ham, "before the year is out." That's it, folks.